Hello, thank you for checking out the first episode of Hidden Talents. Today I'll be sitting down with a very good friend of mine, Stefan, who is otherwise known as UKPW commentator, the Mouthpiece. There are a few connection issues in the video where we start to sound a little bit like robots, but all the content's there. So get comfy and enjoy my conversation with the Mouthpiece. Check it out.
Those that don't know, this was role reversed a few weeks back, and you were interviewing me for UKPW. You started that conversation by asking me what my earliest wrestling memory was, and I thought it's the perfect place to start here too, so I'm going to fire that one right back at you.
Right. Okay. God, this is really makes me feel old when I revisit this. I believe it was 1985. I was just coming up 3 years old. Every few weekends or whatever, I used to go shopping up Hempstead Valley Shopping Centre with my grandparents, and my granddad used to wheel me around in the old trolley, as you do. And while my nan was off looking at whatever, I remember she walked off. They used to have a display set up where they'd have the VCR with the TV and one of the latest releases that was available on VHS at the time. And on one of the setups they had WrestleMania 2. And I remember because my granddad used to love wrestling. So he sort of pulled up and stopped, and he like to look at it. And I noticed these two massive guys inside this blue structure, which was steel cage, the old legendary blue steel cages. And I remember watching it, and it stuck with me. And I remember sort of, talking to my granddad about it. I didn't know too much and that, and I was hinting about it and that, and he told me about wrestling and that, and I went and he just put some wrestling on for me, and that's kind of how it got into it. It was like Hogan, and and I remember not long after they actually bought the VHS tape, and then we was at a boot fair and they managed to get WrestleMania 1 for me. And then anytime we would go to boot fairs, we would keep an eye out for the old WWF VHS tapes. And then literally started a collection. I was just absolutely hooked. And Hogan was, the big, larger than life character, the one, that really stood out. And that was it for me. So, 30 odd years later, I still love wrestling, even though I have a love-hate relationship with it. But yeah, that was my earliest memory all that time ago.
Before I was born, that was, mate. Yeah, that makes you feel old. You're welcome. Was even from a young age when you started watching it then, was getting into wrestling something that ticked around in your head?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, growing up, I wasn't a very sociable person growing up for a lot of time. I had a lot of issues with my anxiety and my depression, and I kept my circle very, very, very small. And I remember, we used to, in primary school and secondary school, we used to set our bags up to make like the four corner ropes, and depending on how many there was, we'd like mark out where the ropes would be, and we'd wrestle on the field or the playground, and it was like doing Royal Rumble. So it'd be like, if you were pushed or thrown over the sort of the line, you were eliminated, sort of thing. And yeah, we had so many memories of doing that. And I remember some poor guy called Lee. I delivered it was almost, from what I heard, was an almost borderline perfect double A spine buster, Arn Anderson style spine buster on the field once, to the point where it absolutely knocked the wind out of him, where we actually thought he was really, really hurt. So yeah, we had those. We used to do that growing up, and I wasn't really aware of any training schools in the area. I kind of rue not finding out. I mean, we didn't really have the internet as much really back then as what we do now. Now it would have been very, very easy. I wasn't aware of training schools, but it was always in the back of my mind that if I ever found one at some point and had the opportunity to go and learn, I would. That didn't really happen until I think it was 2007, 2008. There was a local show promotion called Riot at Wrestling, and they used to have training and run shows down at the Sunlight Centre in Gillingham. And I started going along and training. And that's when I kind of realised what a bad shape my health was in and my body. It got to as much fun as I had. I just couldn't do the sort of like literally. Obviously, I enjoyed waking up next morning aching because I felt like I'd earned that. It was like, you know, it comes with the territory. I love the idea of aching, you know. But yeah, it got to the point where I spoke to my doctor. And I said, look, this is the situation and everything. And he was just kind of like, nah, physically, he just said, I don't think you'll be able to maintain it, do anything. And it was really soul destroying. But thankfully to Riot Act, they had me referee some shows, which I really enjoyed. They didn't have to get me to do it, but I did. I had a lot of fun. And then I just thought about, you know, potential opportunities of being a part of wrestling without being an actual wrestler itself. My dream is still to be a manager, so I could still in some way be involved. That's something which is kind of in the background waiting for the right opportunity. I have had discussions with certain people about that. It's something which hopefully will come into fruition a little bit further down the line. But I got the opportunities with a company based near London called BECW. They wanted a ring announcer for their big show. I went. A friend of mine turned around and said, "Oh, I know a guy who would be great at it." They got me in. I did it. Had a great time. They got me to do some more shows. Ended up turning it into commentary, and then Anton Green, who was at the time the owner of UKPW. I'd known Anton since we were little friends at infant school. He turned around and said, look, you know, we need a ring announcer. If you want to come along to the show and do a job for us, more than welcome to. I went along there, got my foot in the door. Never really liked ring announcing. Hate it. Absolute hate it. But it was an opportunity. The door, though, wasn't it? Yeah, it was an opportunity to be involved, you know, and I was very appreciative still to have the opportunity. So it went from there, and then I guess they kind of found out when I was asked to step in on commentary that that's kind of more of where I was suited. And yeah, I've been more commentary ever since.
Just before we touch on how the Mouthpiece character started evolving and came about, you did mention something briefly then about anxiety. Something a lot of people don't seem to understand is how can someone so confident in performance like yourself and play this brash, full of himself character find such comfort in front of a crowd doing that? I can liken it to myself in some ways. I don't feel that I deal with anxiety or anything like that necessarily, but if I was to sit in front of a crowd of people and told, go and talk to them, be yourself, I'd freeze up. If someone put a guitar in my hands and said, go and play to these 1,000 people, yeah. Do you know what I mean? There's sometimes that even when you're dealing with something, you find an escape through creative mediums like yourself, where you can go and perform and you seem very confident. And I think that's a testament to someone who's dealing with those kind of pressures, that actually this is how they deal with it. People deal with it in different ways. Is that something that you've worked on consciously, or is that something that's just once that red light goes on, for example, you kind of switch into that role and just find comfort in it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a medium way of channeling. It's almost because you've got something to hide behind. You know, when I'm performing now, I'm the mouthpiece. I'm not Stefan. I'm not me. I'm someone else. It's a character. That character could be whoever you want it to be. They could be as confident and as obnoxious and as cocky and that as you want them to be. Like you said, you know, stick a guitar in your hands in front of thousands of people, you're right at home. Because at the end of the day, you know, you're doing what you love, and you know you've just got people watching you. You don't have to address people. You don't as such, whatever. It kind of sounds really, really strange. Whereas my role can at times entail of addressing people. I cannot wait for the day I become a manager, a heel manager. For those who are not familiar with wrestling, a heel is a bad guy. I cannot wait to stand in the ring with a microphone with my associates beside me, cut a promo, insult the crowd, be booed at, and you know, I'm hungry for that. to have that negativity, because I know I'm doing my job correctly. The more heat I get from people, the better. And that's the thing. I don't have to be me. I don't have to be like, oh, hi, everyone. Yeah, it's nice to see you all. I'm out there and go, Gillingham, Medway. I was born here and that. And, look at the state of you people. Look at you idiots and everything. Oh, I remember seeing you last week as I was passing the job centre and that. But ain't that funny? I'm sure I see you working your benefit sheet and, just anything, just picking up on anything, looking around saying, oh, is that your wife, sir? So sorry, I thought it was your brother. You could just do that, and then you move on. It's just, it's a good way of hiding, what you struggle with, and I find it so easy to do. When I started, like I said, when I did refereeing, I was only concerned about, my timing, because the timing is everything. I needed to know if there was going to be like a bit of cheating going on. I needed to make sure I was distracted at the right time, that I didn't see anything I shouldn't have seen and things like that. That played on me a little bit. But standing, introducing wrestlers to the ring, talking to the crowd. If I go back and I look at some of my UKPW footage of me as a ring announcer, I'm speaking it, but I don't feel confident at all. I really, really don't. Commentary is easy because you're talking into a microphone. No one is, apart from who's sitting next to you, no one's listening to you live. So it's quite, easy. And if you cock up, there's the editing team to, cut bits out or whatnot. But yeah, doing something which you really, really love is a nice way of being able to overlook your anxiety. It makes you feel comfortable because you're confident knowing you can do good things with where you're comfortable, and that's
absolutely. I think, definitely, it's kind of cathartic in a way sometimes as well, but you get to live that out. Sometimes when you're dealing with something internally, you can actually go and be creative and use that in a good way, like so many good creative people have done. You touched on relationship with Ross there a little bit. When did that relationship start developing? Because you mentioned confidence on the mic. If you go and listen to any of the commentary at UKPW between you guys, there's a really good rapport between you two. You're ridiculously arrogant character and this really nice guy, Ross. Where did that start formulating, and how did that kind of conflict come about between you two?
Right, that's a good question. I mean, Ross, we were both kind of good guy, generic commentators. It just, it got boring because, there was we couldn't bounce off each other. It was just, I pitched to Anton Green, who was the UKPW owner at the time. I said to him, look, I don't think it's working as a two-man commentary team, because sometimes we'll be joined by a third guest and it'll be, one of the wrestlers and that. And I said, it's not working, with us, in agreement, etc. Both of us being good guys. So I pitched the idea. I said, look, I've always wanted to become a heel. Can I transition into it? And after we spoke a bit about it, I sold it to him, and he said, okay, we'll do it, but gradually do the transition, because if you just turn up one show and you're a heel, it's not going to make sense. So we worked towards it. Ross unfortunately I say unfortunately, it kind of worked out in some ways. He missed 2 shows in succession because I know he was very, very ill. And he came back, I think it was November of 2018. The actual show is on, in its entirety, is on YouTube, on the UKPW YouTube channel. It was UKPW Showcase from November 2018. And it was Ross's first show back, and it was at Medway Park in Gillingham. And I spoke to Ross prior, and I said to him, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be a little bit more sarcastic. I'm going to wind you up. You're going to notice the changes in my attitude. Point those out and let the rest come naturally. I'm going to give you a bit of a hard time. You need to respond, and that's what we did. And just from then on, we just built out this chemistry. We just bounced off each other. He's the sort of, the poor guy in the wheelchair commentator who's kind of like, I'm here to do a professional job, and I've got to sit next to this obnoxious guy who just constantly keeps taking the mick out of my disability, which to be fair, is part of my character. Ross thankfully allows me to. I always say to him, if you think it's too much or whatever, let me know, because obviously I don't want to put it down on the things for him. But he's fine, which I'm very grateful for, because it helps me out as well with the character. And Ross, to be fair, and I know he'll openly admit, Ross is not the most confident of people. He has a lot of self-confidence issues, and they do at times hinder him, and he holds himself back. And sometimes I've had to give him pep talks beforehand when I've told him, I need you, not a case of Ross, yes, you can do this. I've said to him, I need you. Without you, the Mouthpiece at the moment doesn't work, because you're the only guy I've worked with. Yeah, you're the only guy I've worked with where the chemistry works so far, but once Ross gets past the self-confidence issues and he's on the ball, Ross is fantastic. He really, really is. And I'm really thankful for him, because there's been a couple of times where his anxiety's almost prevented him from appearing and doing a show. But from me having pep talk with him, I've convinced him to do it, and he's gone on to do some of his best commentary work, which, I'm so thankful for. So I have to give Ross a massive shout out, because as the UKPW team called us, we are the A team, essentially, which that's what they've called us. And, and as much as I would like to work with different people on commentary, just for the different experiences and the different personalities, I would love to have Ross there as often, more so than not. And that's, credit to him, because, we're going through this COVID situation. It's been, 13 months since we last did a show. We're all chomping at the bit to get back. Ross is raring to go. And I've said to Ross, with UKPW, when we start up again, it's going to be different, because it's going to be different ring, different setup. The production value goes up more. In an interview for UKPW Insider I did with Alex Gilbert, who's one of the new co-owners, he wants UKPW shows to become more of an experience for fans. It's not just the case of spend your money, turn up, watch some wrestling for a couple of hours, go home happy. It's turn up, we'll give you the wrestling, but we will give you more than just the actual wrestling. You get more for your money. So I'm so excited about that. And I know if Ross is chomping at the bit the way he is, I'm really excited to see what Ross can do when we get back to it, because the guy needs a backbone, because I really do lay it on thick with him. I really do give him a hard time, but it's all in good fun. It's all for the entertainment value, So
as you said, it's characters, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's not.
It is. That's it. It's great fun. Absolutely.
Professional wrestling hinges, much like music in many ways, so much on that instant reaction.
Yes.
That relationship with the crowd and relationship with people that are watching you perform. Without them, it loses something. It really does.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it there about not, just can't wait to get back. And I understand that. How's the pandemic been for you and your colleagues to do this kind of performance without being able to actually do it for such a long time?
It's something I'm in agreement with Alex. We brought this up in the interview as well, and I'm on board with what he said 100%. There's been pros as well as cons. Obviously, the cons have been there's been no shows. We've not been able to do what we love. It's been hard for everybody. The pros are the company's changed hands. It's allowed Alex and Jack's the other co-owner, the opportunity to now prepare more for when we relaunch in terms of new equipment, new setups, things like that as well. They've managed to speak to talent who haven't been in UKPW before. They've managed to sign some new talent, creating a women's division, getting new championship belts created. So everything's kind of, the opportunity's been there now for things to be put in place for ready for when we do relaunch. We've already got it for Systems Go. We're not waiting on anything or anything like that. But also, as much as I've been around Jack and Alex for the past sort of 5-6 years, and or maybe even longer than that now, it's given the opportunity for us to get to know each other more, because we talk more about the business side of things, what we're doing, as well as personal side of things. And it's been a real pleasure to get to know them on a more personal level. But everyone has found it a struggle. Unfortunately, there's some of my favourite guys that have wrestled in UKPW that unfortunately they're walking away from the business now. They've decided COVID's made them think, you know, I want to pursue other interests. I want to give it up. I mean, there's a couple which I'm hoping it's going to be a temporary thing. But it has had that effect. So there are some guys which I was looking forward to seeing again that aren't going to be there, which is a massive shame. So yeah, it's been very, very tough. There's going to be a lot of ring rust, I think, from some of the guys. But yeah, it is just literally just kind of like, look, just want to get this pandemic over with. Let us get back to doing what we love, you know, and let us live our lives as well, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been tough. Yeah,
I imagine they need to build up that body callus again as well, don't they? From, you know, being out in the ring for so long, I can't even imagine what that must feel like. What, if there are any, of course, direct influences have you had on creating the Mouthpiece character?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. The number one, straight up, Bobby the Brain Heenan. That is without a doubt the number one influence. That what I'm trying to do over time, because I'm still developing the character. The Mouthpiece people will see when we relaunch isn't necessarily going to be the same Mouthpiece that they last saw. I'm looking for a more serious, more intense thing, but the jokes and the comedy side, which I call the heel Jerry Lawler factor, almost, it's still there. But in terms of intensity and taking it more seriously, a more serious approach to it, Bobby the Brain Heenan, especially when I get to take on the managerial role, I know I can cut promos. I know I can be intense, deliver a promo. Whoever I get paired with, I will give them 110% to put them over, to build them up to what they should be. I live by the motto that Bobby Heenan most famously said, which was, you know, you listen to me, I'll take you to the very top. If you don't listen, you're never heard from again. That's kind of the motto that the kind of like the status I want the Mouthpiece to be at, that where I can, you know, live by that. The character can live by that sort of thing, where I want to be, you know, managing champions. I'm going to take these guys. I will build them up. They've got to do the job in the ring. They've got to be convincing, but I'm, you know, the one who's going to hype them up. I'm going to make the crowd listen and take note. Their opponents are going to take note. It will work well with guys who don't necessarily talk so much on the mic. Bit kind of like, that's where the Paul Heyman side sort of comes in. But the other thing is there's all elements of Heyman in some of my commentary anyway, because those who are familiar with the company and have seen footage, for example, Alexander Roth, who was our champion, you know, I've given him credit as being a credible champion. What a fantastic champion is. If you listen to Paul Heyman, he will turn around and say to someone, you know, for example, when he was managing Lesnar, when Lesnar was going against Roman Reigns, he was saying to Roman Reigns, you, sir, are a fantastic champion. You're a great athlete. You're one of the absolute best, but you're not there yet because my client is number one. And look at it now. He's managing Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is in that spot. He's doing, you know, he's putting over Roman Reigns the way he's been putting over Lesnar for years. And that, I think, is very, very important. You've got the guys around you, but you've got the guy. And you need to make sure that that guy is made to look as important and as prestigious as possible. So I have that, and that's kind of what I try to do, is I take little elements of different managers and commentators, and then I kind of go, I nitpick at what I like best about them and try and mold them into one. But and I know this is going to be kind of like a, you know, a kind of like a plea to Alex and Jack of kind of like, please, sirs, let me get on and do it. It's kind of like, you know, give me that chance, I will deliver. I've got no doubts. I'm so confident that I can do it, because I admit I'm a bit sad. I've recorded promos during the pandemic on my own. I've worked. I've looked at myself. I've looked at the intensity in my eyes. I've, you know, tried to give it a little bit of a Jake Roberts, you know, with the eyes, you know, giving it all of that. So, yeah, it's the influences are, you know, they're there, and that's what I'm, you know, what I try to do. I want to try and grab all those bits and create it into one monster, so to speak. You know,
I want to transition a little more into talking about music. So yes. I feel that the best getting off point really is, what's your favourite wrestling thing?
Of all well,
I know what it is. I don't know if you're going to admit it or not.
Yeah, I think you know what I'm going to say. Right, I have, and I get laughed at, and I don't care. So shut up, everyone. I have a soft spot. I love the Fabulous Rougeau Brothers theme, the All American Boys. I absolutely love that. I actually love the tag team. I was probably one of the only guys in like the 80s and early 90s that actually liked the Fabulous Rougeau Brothers. Yeah, Jacques and Ray were fantastic. But if we're talking more serious wise, it's got to be Demolition. That theme. Oh, I mean, it just sounded so different to all the other things at the time. You know, when that hit would that riff would come in, and that it was literally it was almost like a war cry. And I loved, you know, the way they would come out with the masks, you know, march into the ring, kind of looking like a couple of gimps, with the gimps, a little bit kind of. Okay, a bit questionable about the attire, but you know, you kick ass, so that's fine. But yeah, I would say in terms of all-time favorite, probably Demolition for me is probably the greatest. But there are other ones throughout little periods of time which stand, you know, for me, like Edge, for example. You know, Metal Ingus from Alter Bridge stands the test of time. That's another one that sticks out for me. You know, absolutely. CM Punk's original theme, Kill Switch Engages, Fire Burns, absolutely love it. You know, that's another one that sticks out for me. So yeah, that's one thing I do love about wrestling is how much influence of music there's always been throughout the years. You know, when you do think of wrestling, you can think of music, and you know the way that the two go hand in hand. You know, that's kind of one of the things I disagree with WWE nowadays, where obviously I lived through the Attitude Era where they used to bring in some really kick-ass metal and rock themes for pay-per-views, and their selections would always be so good. Nowadays, it's a load of crap from people you've never heard of. NXT is the only place that seems to bring that kind of musical feel back in. I mean, we had War Games a few weeks back, and they had War Pigs and Black Sabbath. I mean, you don't get much perfect than that. You know, so yeah, it's great. I love it.
One of the reasons why I want to discuss music with you is because our friendship kind of, in large part, grew from our mutual love of particular music genres and similar bands and stuff. And from all the people I know that don't play instruments or aren't involved directly in music, you still have that same enthusiasm about music as I do, even though I'm involved in it and you're not. And I think that's great to see. Where did it start for you? Was it a young age that you kind of you were drawn to music, or was it a particular type of music that pulled you in?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, before even my memory serves, my parents always reminded me that there used to be songs in the early 80s when I was really, really little that used to come on, and it would have an effect on me. I'd sort of stop playing with my toys if it came on the TV or whatever. I would just stop playing, and then I would just get up, and I'd be in like my nappy or my little PJs, and then I'd just start dancing along to a certain song, whatever it be, and that would be, you know, and I always remember, you know, the drives in the cars, you know, with the old cassette tapes on, and it'd be like different 80s music, etc. I mean, my being raised by my stepfather since probably, I think, the age of 5, I think it was, he's a massive Queen fan. Queen have been a massive influence in my love for rock music, but not just rock music, because I don't always define Queen with rock, because Queen for me have always been a band that experiment and not ashamed to try something different. You know, you think Bohemian Rhapsody, yeah, it's a rock song, but it's also an opera song at the same time. So you've got that as well. You know, from the albums like Hot Space, they went for of a more beatier sort of album, which, all right, the album wasn't great. Another One Bites the Dust was probably one of the best songs to come from around that time anyway. But yeah, they're not afraid. I mean, it's like the song Innuendo. I mean, I can't even to this day tell you what genre Innuendo is, because it's got so much elements of so different sounds. But that riff with like what sounds like the banjo playing and then burst into a Brian May solo is still, for me, one of the greatest musical segments I've ever heard. So yeah, it was kind of from there, and that's when my love for Metallica grew. And I know you'll be interested to hear this, because you know, I know how much you love Metallica. Metallica always gives us heavy, baby. Was in infant school. we used to obviously have our little tape and whatnot. And a friend of mine, Ash, he actually played guitar from a young age, and he was listening, to his music, and he had the Ride the Lightning album on cassette. And I remember the first ever Metallica song I ever heard was Creeping Death, which is why it's one of my favourites still to this day. That just, and I remember listening to it, and then he lent me the tape for a couple of days. Well, I actually took it home, made a copy onto another tape. Kids,
It's all we kids.
Big kids back then. We didn't know things about copyright. We didn't understand all that back then. And I remember I just kept listening to it. And, you had like Call of Cthulhu on there, Ride the Lightning, and A Fade to Black, which is my favourite Metallica track of all time, Fade to Black. And, yeah, I just fell in love with them. And then obviously the Black Album came out as we, got a little bit older. And, yeah, it was just, for me, I love all this. And then that's when I, started to listen to more music, AC/DC, another band which to this day I love, Pink Floyd, very, very different, but incredible. The thing with Pink Floyd was how experimental they always sounded. It was just 1 minute you can listen to a Pink Floyd song which really makes you like, yeah, this has got some great, and some great solos and stuff into it, to listening to a Pink Floyd song that actually makes you think, whoa, am I in a different world? You're almost like zoned out, and the next thing you could just be laying there and be relaxed by listening to them. And then you have Motorhead, which was just aggressive loudness, and Maiden, and that was it. It was just all these different bands, and that was it for me. It was just no going back. That was it. But music's always played a huge part of my life. Through with my parents, my biological father and my mum splitting, and the difficulties I had with all that, to listening to when my stepdad came along with the Queen, and that, through the struggles that I had through school, relationship breakdowns, whatnot. There's always been a song by a rock or metal band that has always resonated with me or helped me get through those times, and I literally would be absolutely lost without music. I couldn't imagine life without it.
Yeah, I know that feeling, man. I can definitely empathise with you there. Who would you cite as your favourite band? Could you cite a favourite band?
I have a top 5.
Go on.
For me. It's not in particular order. I mean, Queen, because of the influence they've had. And Freddie, for me, just the ultimate showman, like front man for me, just absolutely incredible. Band called Nightwish. They are just, I listened to them. I started listening to them in the late 90s. They've been around since I think 95, 96 was when their first album came out. But it was the late 90s when I was towards the end of secondary school. And what they are now to who they were back then is very, very different. I mean, the stuff they come out with now is just absolutely phenomenal. Even how they managed to just even think of what to write and to put it out there is just, it's absolutely incredible. Metallica, obviously, AC/DC is another one, but Rammstein is obviously, for the German industrial metal. For me, I remember I didn't fall in love with Rammstein until I think it was sort of 98, before the Sehnsucht album came out, because that was their second studio album. The first one, Herzleid, came out. The first song I ever heard was Wollt ihr das Bett im Flammen sehen? And I just remember the riff, the din, 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 like that, and just thinking, oh, this is good. And then all of a sudden, you've just got this guy going, Wollt ihr das Bett im Flammen, saying, wow, like this. And I'm like, what? What is this? And then and a friend of mine, Scott, was like, oh, this is a band called Rammstein. I've been listening to it for ages. Like, okay, play the next song. Okay, play the next song. And then it's just like, that Christmas, it was like, what do you want? I got both albums, that and Sehnsucht, for Christmas. And I remember my mum going, the hell is this? Because I'm actually wearing Sehnsucht's album T-shirt. So you can imagine my mum seeing an album cover with these guys with these weird things on their faces, and she's going, what the hell is this? you know, and I've got to try and explain, like, you know, and she's like, oh God, you know, don't you play enough noise? Well, clearly not, because it's about to get worse for you anyway. Although I still maintain that the Mutter album is an absolute masterpiece, which is in a category of its own. You think of albums that define music. For me, Rammstein's entry is Mutter. That album is just, it's untouchable. It's up there with some of the other greatest albums of all time, like the Back in Black album. You know, you could, well, multiple Metallica entries or Queen entries, anything you want to put up there. And thanks to you, Camelot. You know, Camelot, you got me into, which has been, well, nearly 11 years now, which is, never look back on there. We've seen them multiple times, never disappointed, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we almost cried together when Roy Khan, who was the front man, left. We both called that Tommy Kerovic would be the perfect replacement. He did. So I think, you know, when it comes to Camelot, we're quite on it with that. But I'm going to have to give a mention. I know I've gone over 5, but I've got to, because of how much we've grown to love this band. And it was by pure accident, because they supported a Camelot gig. Evergrey. Yeah. I mean, Evergrey. I mean, you look at Tom England. No offense, Tom. I know we get on great. You look at Tom and you're like, okay, proper rock star. You hear the guy sing and you're like, is that really him? The guy's phenomenal. And I can't wait to hear for the brand new album they've got coming out. I mean, it's just, it's magic. It's magic. So yeah, so they're sort of like my top 6, 7. You know, I have to give them a mention.
I'm the same. If it comes to say, what's your favourite? I can't. I listen to too many that I love.
You feel wrong for leaving one of them out, because they have an influence. I mean, we've known Evergrey for what, about 8, 9 years now. It's been approximately, and you know, even hearing what the influence, how much you've fallen in love with them. You know, I've heard you do your covers of "Missing You," for example, which is wonderful, by the way. And you know, and I find myself listening to them, and I'm just like, this is one of the great random accidents of discovering a band I think I've ever had. You know, because they are that good, and the thing is as well, when you're going through a really tough time in your life, Tom's vocals, they just, you know, it's almost like they're projecting your pain sometimes. But you can listen to another song, and his vocals offer you some soothingness. You know, it's like offering you medicine, like a remedy. And that's what I love about him, is he can, you know, project your pain, but he can also inject you with something to make you feel more at peace. And that's one thing I absolutely love about them. Absolutely.
I agree completely. We found them by accident, and yeah, loved them ever since. Been a loyal fan ever since. Can't wait for the new album. It's going to be awesome. I've no doubt. We're plugging Tom's work here for him, so he better owe us one. You know.
Yeah, seeing him in concert again next year once COVID does.
That'd be good. Speaking of concerts, what's your favourite one you've ever been to?
Oh, this is tough, and it is a tough one. For different reasons. My favourite intimate gig was probably Evergrey Underworld that we went to in 2016, I think it was, or 2017. There was that one because, you know, literally there was nothing between us and the stage. And, you know, I remember you saying about it took you days to recover from how, you know, the ringing in the ears. I'm with you on that one. For intimacy, that one. For discovery, in terms of just seeing just how good a band is live and a vocalist is live from the studio, was probably the first Camelot gig we went to at the Coco. Roy, the only time we got to see Roy, and the bit where I shouted out, "Roy, you're a god," and he like noticed that I had that, and that epic shot of Thomas Youngblood on the balcony playing the intro solo to Forever. You know, that was just, you know, we're like looking and they're like, "Oh, he's up there!" And you just got him up there playing it. It was beautiful. It's a tough one. Rammstein never disappoint. The first Rammstein gig I went to was at the old Docklands Arena in 2001 during the Mutter World Tour. That was spectacular. That seeing Rammstein live for the first time was absolutely incredible. But then again, seeing them at Brixton sort of 4 years later was almost equally as impressive. But if I had, see, this is the thing. I've been to really amazing gigs. It's a three-way tie for me. And it's not just going by which band it is; it's for the full experience. So I'm going to go with Rammstein at Brixton in 2005, Nightwish at Wembley 2015, which they made the live DVD Blu-ray of, and Metallica at Twickenham last year. That was absolutely incredible. I know we saw Metallica at the O2 briefly, like a couple of years prior, but the one at Twickenham, that was. Oh my God. And we had the extra bonus of seeing Ghost live at the same time as well.
Cool.
Disappointing was it was during broad daylight when Ghost were on. It would have been really nice if it had been in the evening. I know Ghosts get a lot of hatred from people, but I don't think they're a band to be taken too seriously, and I just love what they do. I love it's different, and some of their sounds always remind me of like throwback 80s rock music, and I love that. And I love Tobias's personality when he performs. And, I mean, you got the guy when, like, for example, like the Rats music video, you've got him prancing around like he's like some sort of ballet dancer with his, and then you've got the old Rats and the old backing singers doing it. Oh, like, it's 80s sound. It's just no one else is doing it. And I love that when bands are not afraid to do something different, to be different, I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
I think if you're taking Ghost too seriously, you're kind of missing the point.
Yeah.
Personally, like for me, I love them because their melodies. I think especially their guitar work is so clever.
For example, straight up, you listen to them once, the tunes are in your head, and you cannot get rid of them.
Yeah, it's a good hook. They've got a lot of songs that have that hook that just catch it. Well, they certainly do me, and I know that's why so many people enjoy their music. Which gig do you wish you could have been at?
Are we talking about like even before I was born?
Yeah, just big famous gigs. What would you love to have experienced?
Would love to. I think a lot of people probably say I would love to have experienced Woodstock. I mean, I think would have been on the list for a lot of people. So I think that's one. For me, there's a few. I would have loved to have seen Queen at Wembley in '86. They were at their peak then, in my opinion. I think they were there at their peak then. I would have loved to have been at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert in '92 for the simple fact that nowhere else in the world will you see that many talented musicians, those many huge names sharing a stage. Brian May and Slash playing side by side. Tony, and not even forget Tony Iommi on stage. You've got Metallica doing a set. You've got Extreme coming out doing their set. And it's like, what is happening? And I think that's a real testament just to how loved Freddie was as well, to have had so literally, it's the only time I can recall it in music history where everyone from all around the world, the biggest names in music, literally all come together. I mean, you're watching Metallica 1 minute, and you're listening to David Bowie singing, and then you're listening to George Michael and Lisa Stansfield singing, and then Annie Lennox is out there, and then Elton John's there, and it's like, this shouldn't work, but it blows. There's that one. And I think in more recent times, I would have liked to have seen. I was meant to have gone, but it was the Nightwish Decades show in 2017, Rammstein last year, especially. I think if we had known COVID was coming, I would have loved to have been able to have sort of seen out a little last bit of freedom at a Rammstein concert. I mean, it's been 15 years since I last saw them. And obviously I was meant to have been there with you as well. So it would, and you've not yet experienced them live. So it's kind of like, as a long fan, the extra buzz I want to see you enjoying yourself is soaking up that experience. I've done it multiple times, but to see you enjoy and be with you when you're experiencing all that for the first time, because you can describe it. And I always say this about Nightwish as well. You can watch as many live videos as you want. You can listen to as many live albums as you want. But unless you are actually physically there, as a part, you're taken to another world. You can't describe it. And it really is something to behold. It's incredible. But fingers crossed, next year, mate, or 2020, maybe. We'll see.
Hopefully we'll find some normality again. I certainly miss live music as much as the next guy. I miss playing it as well, so...
I will add, in terms of the favourite gig bit, go back to the favourite gig bit. This is just a nice little mention because it's very different and it's off the rock metal subject. The Kingdom Hearts Symphony tour we went to have experienced something like that, and then to have had the composer herself randomly show up and perform in front of us was an honour, and that's just absolutely magical. That, you know, to finally have gone to an orchestral concert, playing music that we're familiar with from a mutual love of a certain video game series, Kingdom Hearts. That was something.
If you've never seen a symphonic orchestra perform live, get out and do it. There's just something. It was a proper, literally, we looked at each other and was like, saw the goosebumps on the arms, you know.
Absolutely, it was. And but like I said, you know, I'm working on with the ultimate. The Hans Zimmer is the ultimate. It's, you know, you know, to be able to have experienced the greatest current you know, score artist there is for film. I mean, that's just, you know, and it's not just him as well. I mean, you've got, you know, you've got Tina Grow, one of the greatest players there, you know, Rosanda Pamphili, one of the greatest violinists, you know, as well. There's just, you know, who wouldn't want to experience that?
Yeah,
you know,
I completely agree, man.
But
completely agree. Stefan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story here today. I hope people learn a little bit about the local performers that we have performing, and hopefully when, you know, things get back to normal, which better be sooner than later, we can come out and see you guys. I know I certainly will be. Hopefully some more people will too. Check the links in the description of the video for work that Stefan's done with UKPW. Also direct links to his Facebook page, his character's Facebook page, I should stress. And yeah, man, hopefully we can all get back to normal performing and doing what we love soon.
I can't wait. I've said it before, and I know others have said it to you as well. You know, when we're allowed our freedom back, you know, we've got some epic times to be had. We're going to make the most of it and create a big bang. Absolutely, 100%. But yeah, no, thank you. It's been an honour to be your first guest. I wish you all the best in this series. I look forward to who else comes on and learning a bit about them. So yeah, UKPW, United Kingdom Pro Wrestling, Mouthpiece from the Southeast, or quite simply the Mouthpiece. Doesn't matter which, as long as you get it right. And thank you, and thanks for all you're doing for UKPW currently musically. You did my theme, you did Ross's theme, you're working on Fentos's theme, and there's more to come. Yeah, fantastic. I wish you all the best, buddy. I really do. Thank you.
My pleasure, mate. That is definitely my pleasure. Thanks again, mate. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the Mouthpiece. Check the links in the description for more work from him and from UKPW. I'll see you next time.